night of the 22nd, went to bed, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, the Lord picked me up and dropped me off in a prison cell in hell with stone walls and bars, just like you would imagine a cell. And I didn't realize where I was at that moment, but I noticed immediately the heat was incredible heat, that I should have been incinerated and died right away, but I was still living through this heat. I looked and I noticed there were these two creatures in the cell. They were reptilish in appearance, huge, about 12 or 13 feet tall, large jaw, big teeth, huge claws, and they were pacing like a caged bull in the cell. They were talking amongst each other, blaspheming God and cursing God. So when I saw these creatures, I didn't realize immediately they were demons, but that's what they were, fallen angels or demons. And they had a hatred for God and for myself. And they immediately directed their hatred towards me and picked me up and threw me into the wall. I felt my bones break. The other one picked me up and shredded my flesh with his claws, just tore up my flesh. And you know, my wife and I like to work out and take care of ourselves and eat right, and now none of that mattered because the body was just being destroyed.
You know, what kind of pain were you feeling when this was going on?
I felt pain. I felt quite a bit of the pain. But again, on the way back, the Lord explained that He withheld a lot of the pain from me so that I wouldn't have to experience the full brunt of it, but enough of it to let people know there is literal pain felt in hell. You will feel pain in the heat, and the torments are tremendous. The screams of millions of people that were coming from outside the cell. And I knew there were people in other spots, in other prison cells, in pits of fire, in large area of fire that I'll get to that I saw. But the screams were deafening, overwhelming screams. It was terrible to even endure that. But you couldn't escape it. It's just so loud and piercing. So that was one of the things. I managed to move. I noticed I had no strength in my body at all. You have no strength in hell. So I managed to somehow crawl. That's as much energy as I could get to make a move. And apparently they let me. I crawled out of the cell. And in one direction, it's completely pitch black. A darkness that was beyond any darkness that you'd feel here on earth. And it was a darkness that you could feel, like it talks about in Exodus 10:21. But I looked the other direction, and there was flames of fire leaping high into the sky. It was off in the distance. I knew it was about 10 miles away, this huge raging pit of fire. And it lit up the skyline just enough to see the desolate, barren wasteland. Nothing green, no life of any kind, just all barren and desolate. So at that point I was drugged back into the cell by the demons and more torments. But after that, I was picked up and taken out of that cell and placed over near the pit of fire. And it was enormous, about a mile across, raging flames. And I could see the outlines of people in this fire, screaming. They were being burned in the fire in torment. I didn't want to go in there. It was already hot enough, but I knew I just didn't want to go into the flames. That's a terrible thing to have to suffer, and these people were burning. And there were demons all around this cell pushing the people back in as they tried to claw their way out. They really couldn't get out anyway, but the demons were just there shoving them back in. I felt so awful for the people, but also for myself. And I looked around, and I could see all these demonic creatures all around me, lined around the cavern of these walls. They're all different sizes and shapes. There were some huge, some small. There were spiders, there were maggots and worms, and big snakes, everything disgusting that you would not want to be around. And they're all there with a hatred for you. You felt this hatred emanating from them. You have a knowledge. You understand eternity there. I could understand that I was there. I would never, ever get out. Never. And the pains that you suffer are really awful there. But the worst thing really is the separation from God and the hopelessness that you'll never get out. And that's why the Lord wanted me to experience that I didn't know Him, to call on Him, because He wanted me to experience what they feel, hopelessly lost, that you'll never get out. And one of the most tormenting thoughts for me was, I thought about my wife. We're very close, and I've told her if anything ever happens in the world, earthquake, tragedy, that I'd find a way to get to her. And I couldn't get to her. I would never get out. I would never see her again. I just wanted to talk to a person, just anybody. But you're denied that. You never get to be with people. You never get to talk to anyone. You're just around these demonic creatures that can torment you and torture you. So you're denied that access. I noticed the smells are just terrible, foul odors.
So like sulfur smell?
Sulfur smell, burning flesh, just the most putrid, rotten smells you could imagine. But you didn't want to breathe. You couldn't really breathe anyway. There's not enough air to breathe. Every breath took such an effort. If I just have to describe it. I breathed like this. It was like every breath you could barely get. And I thought, I'm going to die any second from not enough air. But you have to go on living without enough air also.
Okay, it's so hot. What about thirst? Did you have that sensation? Were you thirsty?
Terrible thirst. Absolute, so dry. My mouth was like I hadn't drank in weeks a drop of water. And that's how it is for eternity. There's no water in hell, Zechariah 9:11. And in Luke, the rich man talked about he wanted just one drop of water, how precious it would have been. And that's what it was like. Just a drop was so precious. And that's how water is to now. My wife and I now, I love water. But
what happened next?
I was viewing the desolate wasteland of hell, and something began lifting me up. And I didn't know what it was, but that was the Lord's presence lifting me up at that point, so I could see a little bit more of hell. And I could see that raging pit of fire with all the people screaming in it, and individual pits of fire with people in their own individual pit burning. And the demons all around clawing at me. Most of the ones that were around me were chained to the walls. I can't explain, but they were chained to the walls. I was glad they couldn't get to me, but as I began, I looked at them and I thought they were so powerful. As the one that picked me up and threw me into the wall, I was like the weight of a water glass to it. Like they had tremendous strength. And I thought, who could fight off these creatures? No one. And you're just hopelessly lost there for eternity. And as I began going up into the darkness, it's already dark there, but there's just a little bit of light by the flames, and it barely travels. But as I went up into this tunnel, as being raised up, it got darker and darker till it was absolutely pitch black. And I was in complete terror at that moment. And right then, when I was just desperately crying out, the Lord showed up, just in a bright light all of a sudden. And
what was the sensation in your body when you saw him?
Well, to go from 1 second earlier to be lost for eternity to the next second, knowing he placed it back in my mind that I was a Christian. So I instantly knew who it was, that it was Jesus. I said, Jesus. And he said, I am. And I just fell at his feet like a dead man. I just collapsed at his feet. And I just wanted to worship him forever and ever. I wanted to thank him over and over and over again for rescuing me, that he's the only way out of this place, is knowing Jesus. I was so grateful. And you know, when you're in his presence, you don't really want to ask questions. You just want to worship him. But yet thoughts came to my mind of questions. And I thought, Lord, why did you send me to this place? And he answered my thought. And he said, because many people do not believe in hell. He said, even some of my own people do not believe that hell exists. That surprised me, but there's been many people that have called in to us, even on radio shows, that Christians that have said they don't believe in hell. But man, we'll
now,
go
outside
there.
of your experience, you realize that if he hadn't gone there to be able to report back to us, and he had gone there because he was a non-believer, he could have never gotten back. Has that thought ever crossed your mind, what it would have been like to be there for all of eternity?
I just can't even really imagine. I mean, when I was there, I did imagine it, and it was horrible to live with that thought, to never get out. You know, there's nobody on earth that's ever experienced utter hopelessness. You could always die to get out of it.
All right, what else did he tell you when he came to rescue you?
He said he wanted me to go tell people that he loves everyone. He doesn't want anybody to go to hell. And he allowed me to feel a piece of his heart at that moment. I saw people dropping one after another back down that shaft that I'd come up. And I felt so bad for the people, but he allowed me to feel a little bit of his heart, what he feels for the people. And he wept over people going into hell. He doesn't want one person to go there. It hurt him so much that the amount he allowed me to feel, I couldn't stand it. I had to ask him to stop. I can't stand feeling what you feel. Just a little piece of what he let God into.
Did he indicate when he's going to return?
He just told me, he said, tell him I'm coming back very, very soon. And he repeated himself and said, I'm coming back very, very soon.
Did you hear that? He said, do you think that Bill had this experience just for the heck of it? It was for you. Now, Annette, this was about 3 in the morning, and he spent, according to the book, 23 minutes in hell. So at about 3:23 or so, what did you hear what did you observe?
I was in a sound sleep, Sid, and I knew it was 3:23 because I automatically turned to my left and I looked at the clock. So we had a big digital clock that said 3:23. And I heard screams. Bill was not beside me, so I proceeded down the hallway. And I found Bill in a state I've never seen him in. He doesn't, his emotions don't go up and down. He's
stable.
He's stable. He's a very stable man.
So what was he what was he doing when you saw him? What did you hear?
Well, I saw him in a fetal position on our living room floor, and he was holding the sides of his head, and he was screaming, "The Lord took me to hell. Pray for me, pray for me. You know, pray that this fear goes out of my mind." And I was just like, I mean, of course I was in shock at first. I was relieved in one sense that he wasn't having a heart attack, because when I found him like that, I thought, oh my, you know, what is happening? And so I just went up to him and I started to pray for him.
There was no warning before you went to bed? There was nothing unstable about what he was saying, doing, or thinking?
No, we just had I mean, we came home, went to bed, went to sleep like any other night, so nothing unusual.
Okay. Only you can answer this. Did he witness to everyone that could breathe and tell them about the reality of Jesus before this event?
He was a more evangelistic person as far as his nature goes. He would try to witness to clients and things like that. But after this experience, it was like an urgency of, I've got to get on the phone, I've got to call my family, we've got to fly out there.
Bill, why?
Well, the reality of hell just really makes you aware that this place is final. I mean, that people, and we have to open up our mouths. If we don't, they're going to go there. So I just felt like, you know, I've got to do everything I can in this short time God's given us and make it count, and witness to everybody that I can.
Listen, when you were a young man, you went through something that should have been it. A shark, you were swimming, and a shark grabbed hold of you and literally was going to bite off, was it your arm or leg?
My leg. I was with a friend surfing, and
what happened?
The shark grabbed me, pulled me off my board, bit my board right in half, and grabbed my leg, pulled me down, and miraculously let me go. And the guy next to me got his leg torn off, so we watched him be drug up on the beach. But
so that was fear. How did that fear compare to the fear you experienced in hell?
That fear was terrible, but it was paled in comparison to what you go through in hell. It's no comparison.
So I assume that the minute you came to your senses, you started telling everyone about this experience?
Yes, I did. People don't have to believe me. It's not about believing me. It's about believing what the Bible has to say about hell, that there's scriptures, over 150 scriptures
Wait a second. You believed in hell before this happened. What is the difference now?
I did. I knew it was fire, and I was, thank God I was saved from it. But I really didn't realize the severity of it, how terrible it is, that you do suffer actual literal burning fire. It's not metaphorical, it's real fire. You suffer thirst, hunger, you never get to sleep. You're exhausted, you need sleep. You don't get to sleep there ever. You never get to be with a person, your memory is intact. All these things you have to endure for eternity. Just one of them alone should kill you, but yet you keep going. But it still took me about a year to settle down from this whole thing. The next year was just, I wanted to grab everybody and witness to them and shake them up and make them aware that there's a real hell and that God doesn't want anybody to go there. He loves everybody and He doesn't want anyone to go. But it's a sad thing that people won't listen to the simple message of the gospel and take His free gift and receive it and escape this horrible place. 1 second after they die, it's too late. There's no turning back. They're never going to get out. Most people think that they're pretty good, and they probably are pretty good compared to people. But if you compare yourself to God, God's ways are perfect. Everything to do with Him is perfect. And if we sin, if we lie, if we commit adultery, if we do any of these things, that's punishable by death according to the Word of God. Romans 6:23, the wages of sin is death. So people, it doesn't matter how good you are, your goodness pales in comparison to God's goodness. So we all need a Savior. We're all sinners. We all fall short of His glory. So we're all in the same boat. We have to have a Savior, or we're going to end up in this place of torment.